substantial show. Thank you so much for listening. Cheerio now.
Come with us into the unknown. Join us on a journey that will open your eyes and push the boundaries of your imagination. Ghostly figures, beasts of Dartmoor, aliens and timeless legends. This is Haunted Devon on Soundart Radio 102.5 FM.
Good evening, and you're listening to Haunted Devon on Soundart 102.5 FM, where we have got an amazing show for you lined up tonight, guys. If not one, not two, but three guests. How are you going to do it, Martin? I do not know.
You always manage to pull it off in the end, Abby, don't you?
Well, we are delving deep into the BBC's hit piece, the Conspiracy Road Trip UFO. We have our first guest, which is Alex G, aka Alex Gans, from Edgemead on Sky Channel 200, and that's controversial TV. Later on, we'll be catching up with Franky who is actually a participant at the Conspiracy Bars, and I believe she has a few bombshells for us. And as a surprise guest as well, we have David Schindler, who used to be ex-intelligence, and he'll be dishing the dirt on the BBC and the Truth Movement.
It should be a fantastic show tonight.
It should be a really good show tonight. If you have any questions for Alex, Franky or David, please post them on the Haunted Devon Facebook page or send us a tweet on Haunted Devon Rad. Stay tuned. Good evening, and you're listening to Haunted Devon on Soundart 102.5 FM. It's another Monday night, Martin.
I know, it's come around again so quick.
It has come around again very fast. Tonight we have an epic show for you guys. We're going to start off with our first guest, which is Alex Garnes, aka Alex G, from On the Edge, which is Sky Channel 200 on Controversial TV. And tonight we are going to be talking about the recent BBC hit piece, Conspiracy Road Trip UFO.
If no one else has got a lot to say on it, I have.
We might not have time
No,
for Martin.
I know. I'll keep my thoughts for next week.
Oh, well, I'm sure we can squeeze you in somewhere, Martin. Later on in the show, we're going to be talking to Franky Marr. Now, Franky, as well as being a media personality herself, used to be a host on Edge Media, was actually a participant on this conspiracy road trip, and apparently she has got some great bombshells to deliver to us about what went on whilst filming.
Brilliant. Can't wait to hear this.
So I'm definitely looking forward tonight. But first of all, I'd like to introduce Alex. Hello, Alex, and welcome to the show.
Hello there, everyone.
Hello,
You've got me completely unprepared. I thought we were going to talk about Doomwatch tonight, but there we go.
God, that's going back some years.
Well,
I
would
don't
you
even
believe
remember
it's
that.
one of these things which you just can't believe, but there is a unauthorised history of Doomwatch called Prophets of Doom by a certain Michael Seeley, which has literally just come out from miwkpublishing.co.uk, and it's sort of like that's my bedtime reading at the moment. But if we want to talk real nightmares, then we've obviously got to talk about the Conspiracy Road Trip, we've had these 3 brand new episodes following on from their complete 9/11 debacle last year. It says everything that, considering the complete hostile reception that 9/11 outing got, the BBC thought it was jolly fun to commission another 3 episodes.
Well, these actually weren't made by the BBC. They were made by a company called Renegade Productions. Now, I have looked into these, and they are very establishment. Previous shows have been a piece on the Rothschilds and the royal family. So they were so going to be objective with this one, weren't they?
It's quite amazing. I mean, I hope that the people who are tuning into us tonight have actually seen the 3 episodes that we're talking about, because the thing is, it's going to take far too long to actually explain the skullduggery that was going on. I mean, I noticed that you called them all hit pieces early on.
Well, they weren't. Then they were hit pieces for them, but they're not for us. Not for the bright and the sane, anyway.
I mean, to be honest, it was almost jaw-dropping comedy of a persuasion that we haven't seen on television since Brass Eye. It's just quite incredible that the BBC can put this out and actually try and promote it and say, yay, there we go, we proved it. We proved that creationism, that all these people who were creationists were completely wrong, and we disproved it. The thing was, what I find really disturbing is that creationism is put there in with seven people who were there to discredit the official line and what happened, and then with people who had been involved themselves with UFO incidents. And it was sort of like, you put the 3 together and you can see immediately what they're trying to do is, by association, discredit all 3.
Well, yes, I mean, creationism in itself, I mean, how can you have it? Well, organised religion is something I don't agree with anyway, each to their own. I mean, everyone's their own beliefs, and I'm not going to put my own beliefs onto other people, because that would be wrong.
Well, I think that's the whole point about the show. It was like it went in straight from the point of view, as all the shows in this series does, that these people are wrong and we're going to prove it. And you know what? With the creationism one, I have to say I thought that was the soft target, where they were really going to be able to nail these people and say, look, it's completely wrong. And, I came out of that, watching that, and thinking to myself, the creationists might have a point, because the evidence that these people put out was spurious at best. They didn't make any case whatsoever. And in fact, our genial host, that Irishman Andrew Maxwell, I mean, I looked at him doing
Host
this.
and producer.
Yeah, and I'm looking at him and I'm thinking to myself, do you know Andrew Maxwell on his own in that show absolutely fundamentally proved that Darwin was wrong, because he was the absolute embodiment to show that actually everything is going in reverse, because he was a step back before Neanderthal man.
I mean, what makes me laugh as well, well, Andrew Maxwell, he is a comedian. That is his profession.
Word alleged is needed in there.
Well, yeah, alleged. I don't find him funny at all, to be honest with you.
But apparently he's getting all these sort of good gigs now. He's getting all these great gigs, and it's really advanced his career doing this. And I can't work out how the hell that has happened.
I don't know how that's happened, but how he sleeps at night, I do not know. I mean, he's either in on it or just totally oblivious.
Down cupboard, I think, is how he probably sleeps, to be honest. Because this guy is not of planet Earth. He can't be, because it was just like everything he did was like, Andrew, please wake up, have a look at what's being said, and have a look at the evidence being presented. How on earth can you defend what is sent as consensus reality? It isn't.
Especially with the 7/7 bombings episode. I mean, with that, they got the people to the conspiracy number 2 on that show was to get them to catch the train from Luton into the central London to see if they would make the deadline.
Yes.
Because as we know, and as it has come out from the Freedom of Information Act and all the rest of it, the 7:40 train, which the 4 alleged terrorist bombers, Sadiq Khan, Sadiq Tanzweer, Hassad Hussein, and Jermaine Lindsay, I can't say these blinking names, didn't actually make the 7:40 train because there was no train that day at 7:40 from Luton to King's Cross.
And the thing is, we're talking about 5-6 years hence.
Yeah.
11 years hence, goodness me, it's been that long.
Oh my word! Yeah, it has. It's been 11 years since 9/11 and 7 years since 7/7.
Well, I mean, this is the case, and the thing was, the whole thing was an exercise in futility, because the basic bottom line is, okay, however they got there, they have footage, they say, which shows them arriving, and they arrived. Okay, fair enough. Now, you've got that footage. Show us the footage that proves they were on those underground trains. Where's the footage of that? And that was something that really they needed to grab hold of and go, whoa, where's this footage? Show us that these are the guys. They had nothing, and the whole thing, and it's true of all the 4 entrants in this series. We include the 9/11 one, the 7/7 one, the creationism one, and the UFOs ones. It was nothing to do with facts. It was all to do with emotion. And with the 7/7 one and the 9/11 one, they would bring people in who were affected because friends, relations, family, whatever, were killed, injured, whatever it was, in those dreadful incidents. And now we're not taking away from their pain, but the fact of the matter is, these people are not expert witnesses about what happened. They weren't there. They're just telling us they lost a loved one. But the bottom line is, and I'm sure Franky is going to sort of be able to tell us more in one shape or form or another. What you see edited out is the crucial stuff, where you actually find, for instance, in the 9/11 and 7/7 episodes, where we find the people are saying, we want a proper investigation because there has not been one.
Well, it's been legalised now that you cannot have an independent investigation on the 7/7 bombings because David Cameron, in his infinite wisdom, pretty much said the inquest said it all, the inquest covered it all, and there will not be a independent review of this or of the evidence because it's too painful for the families.
Well, the bottom line is, I would like David Cameron to actually get out of his bubble and watch the episode of On the Edge that I did with a gentleman called Tom Secker. Tom Secker is a filmmaker, and he literally tells you what was missing from the inquest, what facts did not make sense in terms of what the inquest was accepting as reality. In terms of the explosion is here, but the guy's there, and his passport is over there, and it's like, hold on a minute.
Well, there's so many eyewitnesses who were on that train who are survivors that will testify that the explosion came from underneath the train, from the track, and you know there's actually photos of the floor pushed up from the explosion from underneath.
And you have this marvellous man that they got in on the 7/7 conspiracy road trip, because people who have seen this and are going, what are these lunatics talking about?
Sanity, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. But unfortunately, this is how this BBC Three series set it all up. We have a situation where the guy goes, well, of course, yes, it doesn't matter where the explosion actually was within the train. Of course, it would bounce down and then bounce up and spread around. And it's just like, I'm sorry, you're just making this up.
Well, from NIST, the 9/11 Commission, one of their excuses for the towers falling down, that gravity wasn't working that day. So I think it must be on the same line of thinking with the bombings on the trains as well.
The laws of physics are out the window.
The laws of physics didn't happen in Manhattan.
And it is one of these things that people love soundbite television, and I think the thing is, this whole Conspiracy Road Trip series was all about soundbite television. It was all about disproving things without going anywhere near facts.
It's not only that, they're using it to discredit the whole truth movement as a whole, and make people who believe in the truth and fight for the truth, people such as yourselves, people such as me and Martin, Franky, and all the other wonderful people out there that are actually striving to get the truth out and stop these atrocities from happening again, to look like complete and utter lunatics.
And you know, we should be flattered. We should be flattered, because the simple reason is that means that we're getting traction. It means that reality is starting to set in with people, and they're looking at what is being said and going, this is nonsense. And I think it's one of these things with, it was certainly true with the 9/11 show that Conspiracy Road Trip did.
I know, I can't believe they used the pancake theory on that.
Well,
I really can't. I mean, you cannot have it both ways. The pancake theory shows the floors hitting the others, bang, 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 knocking the others down, but yet the central core columns are still left standing there.
And
where were the core central columns standing there on the actual Twin Towers?
The thing is, we can sort of, wax lyrical about this until the cows come home, but the simple reason, the simple thing is, people who'd not heard any of this saw that show and went, I don't believe the official story anymore.
Well, no.
Because they looked at it and it had backfired. They got a complete and utter backfire. And this is the thing. The 7/7, I think, amongst those who could be bothered to watch. I mean, let's be serious about this. This is BBC Three.
I sat through it again today, and I watched 3/4 of it, and I couldn't watch any more, Alex, because Andrew Maxwell was just doing my head in, and I was just getting annoyed because what they were doing and how they were portraying the truth movement and these people's beliefs and strive for the truth was just absolutely ludicrous. It was just getting on my last nerve.
I bet you if you got Andrew Maxwell in a room to defend the way he had done that, he would basically say to you, well, I was just doing the work of the average man and saying what I saw and whatever else. And it's like, no, Andrew, you were part of the hit piece that was designed to stop people questioning what was obviously a lie.
Yes, definitely.
And the basic bottom line is, Andrew, darling, you are not a comedian anymore. You have completely reframed yourself as someone who is the equivalent of World War II's Lord Haw-Haw, who basically, as an Englishman, gave all the propaganda from the Nazis to the British people. And he is the modern day 21st century Lord Haw, and he has got to realise what he has done and the significance of what he has done.
Well, he's just a Zionist bootlicker at the end of the day, a very unimportant person whose career is going to literally dive down into the floor, especially when more and more people are becoming aware, because no one is going to take him seriously, because he is a comedian, because he's made himself the joke.
But the problem is, if those in power are going to decide that he's going to be the next presenter of a Saturday evening BBC One entertainment show, guess what? He will be, and suddenly he will be famous for having sold his soul.
Alex, how about having him in one of your shows and put a few questions to him?
We would love that.
It would be lovely. I mean, it is one of these things that, you saying that reminds me of when Ian R. Crane and myself went down to an academics gathering in London, whereby they were going to tell us why all these people believed in conspiracy theories. And the basic bottom line was that we're completely mad and that we need something to, as some sort of thing to lean on to make our lives worthwhile.
Well, it's to externalise our inner lunacy, isn't it?
Well, this is it, but don't take any offence by us saying.
Oh, no.
Please, no. We're just stating what is obvious from our studies of psychology, and it's like, no, you basically dismissed all the evidence, refused to look at the evidence that we are presenting to you, and therefore the only way you can dismiss that evidence is by saying the people who are presenting it are obviously mad.
I mean, a classic BBC blunder, I shall call it. I mean, the biased BBC, I mean, there's total websites dedicated to this. But the biased BBC, take our listeners back to that horrific day on 9/11. After the towers collapsed, and we had a news bulletin pop up, and I can't remember the presenters, the woman's name. When she announced the collapse of World Trade Center 7. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, World Trade Center 7 was the third building to come down that day. It wasn't just the two towers.
Abby, that was cock-up, not conspiracy.
I know,
Cock-up,
yeah.
And if there are any skeptics out there...
Sorry, so let me see. Let me just define this as a cock-up. The cock-up was...
No, the cock-up was they broadcast it too early.
23 minutes too early? 24?
24 minutes too early, when Building 7 was clearly visible behind her.
Behind her, yeah.
Their reframing of reality is this cock-up was, the information was given to us before it had actually happened. And it was like, yes, that's right. So who gave you that information? Oh, it came off a news feed. It came off a news wire. It was information that we received from somebody else. Yes. Did you ever try and find out where these other people got it from? It's all, you are a news organisation with journalists. Has any of you actually stood up and gone, whoa, hold on, they got it from there, but who did they get it from? Let's ask them.
If anybody's still sceptical about whether there was a conspiracy with 9/11, all they've got to look at is the Building 7 situation and the cock-up made by the BBC. This proves beyond any doubt there was a whole conspiracy behind the entire tragedy of that day. And also in the final commission that the US military did, not one mention of Building 7 in that 1,000-page report.
That was outside the remit, wasn't it? It was outside the remit.
We can't explain it, so we're not going to mention it.
Yeah, this is it. This is beyond our remit, so we're not going to talk about it. And it's just like, well, hold on a minute. What do you mean it's beyond your remit? You're saying that anything you actually can't put a logical sort of definition around. You're going to say, no, that's beyond the remit. Well done for sidestepping the issue. And I mean the thing is, this is the case with every conspiracy, be it UFOs, be it creationism, be it 7/7, be it 9/11. All they've actually got to do is address the questions that are being asked. It's the same with the moon landings and NASA. NASA are being asked very sensible questions about Look, guys, all you've got to do is tell us that you mocked up these photos because the ones you got from the moon weren't good enough and they wouldn't look nice enough. And
images in front of crosshairs. That is impossible.
Problems with radiation. Just admit that if you guys would just admit that you mocked them up because the ones you got were either ruined or crap, then that would dispel so many conspiracy theories, because you're going, yes, we hold our hands up, there was a problem with the cameras and we had to mock it up, and that's what we mocked up. And literally, it would make so many conspiracy theories disappear. But their answer to it is, oh, well, this is a conspiracy theory. Of course we took the pictures on the moon. And it's like, well, explain yourselves how these things happened. At the very most minor level, you Photoshop these pictures in whatever the equivalent was in the early 1970s, late 60s, whatever the equivalent was of Photoshop. You did that to the pictures, surely.
Yes, definitely. I'm amateur photographer myself, and I know for a fact that without editing a photo, you cannot. It is absolutely impossible to have an image in front of a crosshair. It just can't happen unless that image has been doctored.
You have had mainstream photographic magazines years ago look at the moon photos and go, these were not taken on the moon.
No.
And it's like, I'm sorry, hold on a minute. Mainstream photo magazines have said these photos aren't real. And nobody's actually gone, oh my God, NASA, please tell us, NASA, why do they think this? Tell us what they said which is wrong. Well, they're obviously conspiracy theorists. No. Tell us, answer the questions. Why is it that the crosshairs are behind some of the images in the pictures? How would that happen? That can't happen.
It's also the lighting on the moon as well. It's been lit artificially, obviously, because it was in a studio, not actually on the moon. And the lighting from the sun, and it's like, hang on, underneath the actual craft is actually lit where it should be shadows, because it's the actual shadow from the craft itself.
And straight away, people are going, hold on a minute, show me the photos. NASA, talk to us. Tell us what the problem is. Oh, it's obviously a conspiracy theory. Yes, we've heard that before. Tell us what has happened so that this has been the case. Because something's happened, something's gone wrong, something's unusual. Just try and give us something. I mean, there are. I mean, I'm of the moon landing generation. I remember as a 5-year-old waiting up to stupid o'clock in the morning to watch the footage of Neil Armstrong setting foot on the moon in that god awful black and white fuzzy picture that we saw. And it's like, guys, I want to believe that this happened. Give me some thread of hope that you guys have not manufactured it. I want to believe, but you're doing everything to keep casting the doubts. And this gets us back to Conspiracy Road Trip. Because the BBC, through the independent production company that they have commissioned, have made it clear that they are not interested in the truth.
No.
All they are interested in doing is saying anyone who has a problem with the official version of any of these stories is clearly mad, but we're not going to tell you why.
No, we're just going to make it look like you're mad.
Yeah.
We're just going to make you look like the most craziest loon ever, whether you be going against the official 9/11, whether you be going against the official 7/7. Creationism, UFOs, the moon landings, the Kennedy assassination, anything. I mean,
crop circles.
And the guy John, who was bless him, who was on the 7/7 thing, and part of the Truth Movement.
Yes.
He actually, bless him, even after seeing the 9/11 debacle that had been put on by the Conspiracy Road Trip the year before.
I think it was Conspiracy Files, that one was called, wasn't it?
No, it was.
It was the Road Trip, was it?
It was the Road Trip. Oh, you I mean, that one takes some beating for completely and utterly. This is the one where Charlie Veitch, bless him, had this conversion and basically went, I I've been mad all this time. I've been completely wrong. I believe the official story of 9/11 now. Well, Charlie,
Did they stop off on the road trip to a re-education camp on the way?
well, I mean, the thing is, there are people who allege, and they're much more expert in these things than I am, but they basically allege that you can tell that there's some mind control going on. And, you know, the thing is, this is the biggest problem. This gets back to sort of, you know, the bigger the lie, the easier it is to get people to accept it.
Well, yeah, all you need to do is repeat it over and over and over and over and over again till it becomes, inverted commas, truth.
And the problem you have with people is if you tell people MK Ultra, Jake Monarch, these things have been documented as happening in the 1960s and beyond.
Oh, they're still going on today.
Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they be still going on? Why would they stop something that works?
Just to let our listeners know, if you don't, MK Ultra was a USA CIA program into mind control. They used a lot of LSD and pretty much programmed people.
And this is the thing. So
I mean, that's what Robert Kennedy's assassin, and his name is escaping me. Whoever comes up first gets a sweetie.
I think it's Saran, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, he
sounds like the villain in Barbarella, but isn't. You know.
He actually publicly states that this is what happened to him. He had no memory of the event, and I think it was Paul McKenna that actually did a program on this and got someone to shoot Stephen Fry, I believe.
Was it him or Darren Brown?
Yeah, I think it
Paul McKenna? Was it
Paul McKenna, to show that this actually could be done. So Paul McKenna unwittingly scored one for the Truth Movement.
And of course, look at the film The Manchurian Candidate, which was 1961. I mean, that was a very brave film, but to prove the point here with this is that was banned from when it first got released in 61 right through to 1989. The US administration ensured that film was banned in all Western world countries until 1989, where they finally allowed it to be released again.
And it's like anything else in this situation. Why on earth would they not want people to see it? And this is the thing, you have to start asking these questions. I mean, I think it's one of these things, and I would say this to everyone who's listening out there tonight, because they will know exactly what I mean. You are surrounded out there in today's society by people who just do not want to turn and face the truth. Because the simple thing is, if they turn and face the truth, they will suddenly realise their government is not on their side. And which question, who are they going to vote for? And someone saying to me, oh, well, it's all right, don't worry. Well, Labour, I know Labour, they're the best of a bad bunch, but at least they won't be as bad as this lot. And it's like, hold on a minute, how long was Labour in power? How things were they responsible for? And you think they're going to be the answer to what we've got now?
Well, it's politics for you. It is a child's playground. I mean, I liken politics to pro wrestling, to be honest with you. It is all an act. They are all part of the same party because they're all taking orders from the same people. I mean, your prime ministers, your presidents, they're not the ones in charge. They're just the front men.
Yeah, they're the puppets.
They're PR guys. Pretty much they are PR guys.
Follow the money. And and it gets back down to sort of, you know, horse racing. Horse racing. If you want to win a horse race, you put a bet on all the horses that are likely to win.
That's it.
It's that simple. It's that simple. And then you look at where the money's going to, and all the corporate interests are putting money in the pots of all the major parties. So guess what? It doesn't matter who gets in. There's favours to call in.
Well, the same agenda will still go through at the end of the day. I mean, look at Obama. He was going to pull out of Iraq. He's got the Nobel Peace Prize. I think, look what he's done since he's been inaugurated. And you got the same thing going on with Romney and Obama now fighting against each other, which gives the public the illusion of choice.
And the illusion of choice, great. What's the illusion of choice? These guys fighting over whether they should put the money in for another series of Sesame Street. Big Bird is the big talking point. Doesn't matter about anything else. These guys are going to argue about whether a big yellow bird should get the country's money or not.
So I'm going to add Big Bird to the cartelism as well as Big Pharma and Big Agro.
Yes.
Oh, I'm actually crying.
Look at what's happening in our media at the moment, and it's
Over
all
the past few days, yeah.
distractions. It's all distractions. It's old stories that should have come out ages ago. Why have they come out now? Why is Sir Jim such a talking point now?
I can't believe that, because Panorama are actually going to be, I think it's tonight, analysing the BBC's Code of Ethics and Conduct on their programme making. I was alright then, so are we.
Fox chickens. Let's look at that. But this is the thing. Who are we going to get to look into the BBC? I'll tell you what, let's get the BBC to look into the BBC.
Oh yeah, I mean that's like getting George Bush's establishment or George Bush's little entourage to look into the 9/11 Commission, you know.
But it keeps happening.
It does. It keeps happening.
Nobody is standing up and going, excuse me, I don't think it would be a good idea for them to be involved in investigating it. And nobody's actually sort of standing up and going, this is mad. This is completely mad. What's the point of this?
Well, the people that are standing up to it and saying it's mad and saying what the point of it is are being called mad themselves.
But, you know, we move on from Sir Jim, we move on to Lance Armstrong. Lance Armstrong, they have had evidence about him for years. They had to, because he's supposedly done it for the whole of a decade, and yet suddenly it's now that it comes out. So why is it now? Why is it this point in time? And I strongly advise everyone to sort of just go off the mainstream and start looking at what's really going on out there, because these are all distractions from what's really happening and what you should be paying attention to. And guess what? I don't even think the truth movement knows what is really going on that we should be looking at right now. I think we're going to suddenly find out what the really big stories are that we are being distracted by.
From. Yeah.
And this gets us back to Conspiracy Road Trip, because creationism, it's a non-topic. I'm sorry to say to anybody who's a creationist out there, guys, you being featured on there was a non-topic. It was a complete distraction from anything else that was going on there. And I mean, we've said about 7/7. How long ago was that? We have to be honest. It doesn't matter how many times we point out about the footage that has been missed in the various car parks. I think it's the Luton car park.
Yes, it has. Yes,
and the missing Jag.
Oh yeah, the
black
car.
Jag.
Yeah.
I mean, a very good programme to watch for all you listeners out there is 7/7 Crime and Prejudice, and that forensically goes through 7/7 with a fine-tooth comb. It really does.
And the basic bottom line is, it's once again, it's always important to remind people that the important thing is, if it's important to emphasise the official line of what's been said happened, you will see it. If it goes against that official line, it's buried. So all that footage, all that video footage here, there, and everywhere that suddenly isn't there or is missing, or we can't find it. Well, the simple fact of the matter is,
it's not available to you.
And the basic bottom line is, it's not available to you because it will contradict the official.
Through Homeland Security, it's not available.
Yeah. Or through British Transport Police, or whoever happens to be, or which Israeli-backed flaming company. And the basic bottom line is, it's sort of like, excuse me, how can this happen? Well, why haven't you got the footage? And again, you see, this is the thing. This is where we all start to sound like nutters, because immediately you say, right, okay, let's go to Princess Diana and her death in Paris. They'd got one of the most sophisticated surveillance set of cameras set up anywhere at that time, because of sort of sporting events and whatever else which were happening around that time. And yet, all the cameras that could have actually told you and showed you what had happened failed at the same time. Is nobody going...
They take her to a hospital that's further away from the nearest one. Her death was... I mean, if anybody actually does follow Masonic symbolism, was extremely symbolic. It was just, I mean, even if people don't believe in conspiracy theories per se, you go and ask anybody on the street what happened to Princess Diana, and I can guarantee every single one of them will say they had her killed.
And it's becoming more and more prevalent that people are saying that. But what changes?
Nothing.
Nothing changes.
Nothing changes. We keep going round the same circles, the same things. I mean, the only reason we can predict their false flags or have an idea when they're leading up to one is because they're so predictable. They follow the same line over and over and over and over again.
Keep us busy watching EastEnders and X Factor.
Oh, yes, yeah. Who went out the X Factor, by the way? That should be our hot topic for tonight, not conspiracy road trips.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was just thinking to myself, considering your lineup tonight, I feel like I'm on the X Factor because...
I know, I tell you what, if we weren't on the radar already, Alex, we're going to be after tonight's show, that's for sure. Mind you, saying that, talking UFOs, me and Martin did our own little road trip after we spoke to you last time to Wiltshire. Now, just as we were getting, when we got back and we were reporting on what happened, just as we were getting to the nitty-gritty of this UFO sighting that we have caught on video, that will be available when I get Byron to sort the editing out for me, we were cut off air.
Live on air,
and we were cut for 10 minutes until we stopped talking about this UFO or whatever we saw, this sighting.
So, I mean, in terms of a technical reason for that, as anybody...
Soundart Studios here, I've got no idea why it got cut off air.
Yeah.
We was talking about the build-up, the whole weekend, the crop circles we visited and the odd little apparitions that we seen. And then as we was building up to talk about the actual phenomenal UFO sighting that we saw at close range.
And we had intelligence agencies turn up at the time.
Yes, watching
almost
us.
Run us over, actually.
Yeah, it was like a scene out of the X-Files with the cigarette-smoking man.
Yeah,
it really was.
Yeah.
So that makes you Mulder and Scully, you realise that?
No. But as we came up to the point, it just went off air.
It did.
Unbeknown to us at the time, we carried on talking, but other listeners after the show were texting us saying what on earth happened.
It was just getting good. It was just getting
so
good.
you were just talking about the UFO and suddenly it just went off.
And then it came back on air.
Incredible.
After we finished talking about that specific incident.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, many people will say, that there's a huge amount of paranoia in the conspiracy movement because they're saying about,
Yeah, but with
they
good
wouldn't
reason,
spend
though, to be
time
fair.
looking at you and they wouldn't turn off your transmission doing this, that and the other. And then they seem to forget that we've had all these stories in the press of all these organisations being infiltrated by people within the establishment who are working for the security services, etc., and are there to either make sure that they're put off the right track or anything they're going to do is reported before it happens and whatever else. But this is the thing, they've got to realise that the game's afoot because we've already been told that this is the level of surveillance which is actually happening in 21st century United Kingdom.
Oh, God, yeah.
And we are not being paranoid.
Nope.
It's happening because it's in the flaming papers. The papers are running front page stories about it, and you're not actually putting two and two together and going, this is happening to every group, which may cause a problem to the establishment.
Well, it's to coin a phrase off David Icke, it's getting the right coordinates. You need to connect all the dots. These separate incidents aren't separate incidents. They are all connected in some way. And the only way you can navigate your way around all the horrible things that are going on this planet is to literally by connecting the dots, finding out that everything is actually linked to everything else. There is no little separate events. They are all linked.
Well, this is it. There's, I'm trying to think of the person who said it, that there is no such thing as coincidence.
No, there's not.
And the problem you have is that, again, it gets back to the thing. This is so huge. The level of the deceit, the level of the conspiracy is so huge. It takes in everything. It gets to the realm where nothing you ever thought was correct is in fact real.
No, it's more like you said on our last show, what we aren't being lied about. Instead of what we are being lied about to.
Yeah, and this is one of my mantras to people, and going, look, you have to work from the assumption that nothing is correct. So if that's from the case, just step back and then look at the world again in another way. Can you actually see it in any other realm? And I mean,
the more people are aware of this, the less they can get away with it.
Well, precisely this, and it's always the thing that you say to people, what can we do about this? It's only me. Tell people, then it's not only you, then it's the people around you who are starting to think and look at it.
But at the end of the day, the elitists, the establishment, aren't that big.
No.
There's more of us, little serfs, little slaves, our little, sheepies doing our own little thing, than there is of them.
The basic bottom line is the number of pockets of people who are actually out there waiting for someone to give them some guidance points. I mean, this is the daft thing. This is how real it gets in my world. I rang up a certain bank today because I was looking at how I could get a new business account, better deal, whatever else. And it came up, and they have to ask you the questions. What do you do? Oh, well, I'm TV producer, presenter. Oh, anything I know about? And you go, yeah, we're on Sky. Oh, I've got Virgin, I haven't got Sky. I said, well, you won't get us, I'm afraid. But so what's your show about? I said, well, it's telling the truth about what's really going on in the world. And this woman at the other end of the phone said, you mean like the moon landings not being real? And I went, yes, that sort of thing. She said, well, it's obvious, isn't it? You look at the photos, there's no way they were taken on the moon. And what about the hatch marks on the screen being sort of behind the pictures within it? And I go, yes. And I said, this is it. I said, you've got just one bit there. She said, oh, every coffee break, me and my friend, who's not here today, I'm sorry about that, but we're always talking about the conspiracies that are happening. I think, oh, yes.
Brilliant.
That's good to hear.
That is brilliant, especially working at a bank as well. I hope she doesn't talk too long, because she won't be too loud, because she won't be working at that bank for very long if she does.
Hopefully I'm not giving too many details away. If I keep using my pseudonym, then we'll be all right. But,
before we go to a quick break, before we get Franky on, this is something that Andrew Maxwell said on the 7-7. Mm-hmm. Why would your government do that to you? I don't see their reasoning behind it. And everyone was sitting around the table and shouting, it's because of money, it's because, they want more war, it's to stop the G8 summit and all the rest of it. And he said, I can't see our own government doing something like that. I've never heard of anything like it. And I just thought, if I was there, I would throw one word at him, and that would be domicide.
Sorry, what was that word?
Domicide, the actual government's authorisation of killing its own citizens.
What a shame. Now, I've learned something tonight. There we go. I thought you were going to go false flags and start going through every single one there.
No, because he wanted to, he didn't hear of a government actually ever doing that.
Well, he's not done his research.
Well, no.
I mean, that's the bottom line, isn't it?
No,
I mean, this is the thing. If you ever want to know what governments are really like, start actually looking at why the war in Vietnam kicked off. What was the story behind that? I mean, there's a great untold story about the Falkland Islands and what was going on in terms of what we were told against what really happened there.
And it wasn't a war against corned beef.
Well, exactly. But again, it's just trying to get people to just sort of, as you say, connect the dots. And connecting the dots, you mentioned David Icke already, and of course, we have to mention the fact that, on Saturday, we've got a 10-hour presentation by the man at Wembley Arena.
I know. Do you know, I tried to get tickets for that, and could I?
You're kidding, really? It's sold out now?
I think so, yeah. I mean, if not, I'm going to be heading down there because, 10-hour presentation, sit through David Icke. Yes, I'm going to have a melted brain, but it'll be worth
Well,
it.
last time I heard, there were just 500 of the 5,500 left. Now, the thing is, it's like, hold on a minute, guys. Everybody's telling you out there that David Icke is discredited. He's already got at least 5,000 people at Wembley Arena to see him.
That's right.
And you're telling us that he's not got something about him. And the simple fact is, do you know, the only people who still have a problem with David Icke are the only ones who have not actually investigated what he's saying.
No, they just see lizard people and the dimensions aren't real. But to be honest with you, when David Icke came all with that stuff about reality is an illusion in itself, everyone goes, is he mad? He's mad. He's stupid. But then quantum physics has turned around and it's come out in the mainstream and gone,
Yeah.
no, actually, reality, it's base level. We're not talking not even atoms, because atoms aren't even there when they're not even being observed. Everything is a waveform, so nothing technically is solid.
And it's like, well, how... I mean, David says about this that the basic bottom line is quantum physics is the area of science which is completely ignored by every other area of science for the simple reason
But it's the most exciting and fascinating science there is.
and would basically mean they would all have to sort of completely reevaluate where they were coming from and with their own scientific beliefs. I mean, this comes back to, again, I hate to keep plugging the show, but on the Edge we did one about the Bosnian pyramids.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I saw that one.
The
Yeah,
reason is you have a scientist there, a geologist, who has sacrificed her career to stand up to the establishment and say these aren't real pyramids.
Yeah.
This means that everything we have ever thought about ancient history is wrong. You're all going to have to go back to the drawing board. And she had senior geologists around her at her university say, don't sacrifice your career. Don't go there. The basic thing that they were saying to her was, we don't want to have to reinvent ancient history
No.
just to be able to accommodate this. And it's like, so in other words, you'll stick with a line that you now know is wrong.
Yeah. Like Salisbury Pyramid, which is known as
Silbury Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is one of these things. For them to have the gall to say these Bosnian pyramids are just strange landforms that have been naturally formed, someone must think we're all completely off our trolleys.
Right there, well, someone must do. To be honest with you, we're the ones that are painted as the loonies. That's what I find amusing. Right now, I'm going to have to go to a break now, and after the break, we are going to get Franky on the line as well. Stay in contact, Alex, because I'm just going to see if I can try and conference call this if I'm clever. We'll be right back after this. Good evening, and you're listening to Haunted Devon on Soundart 102.5 FM. We have been talking BBC Conspiracy Road Trips tonight with Alex G. Next up, we have got a very special guest, Franky Ma. Now, Franky was actual participant on the road trip. She's a media personality in herself with a show on Edge Media that finished in 2009, I believe. But absolutely wonderful person, and I cannot wait to what she has got to hear. Apparently, she's got some amazing revelations for us. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Franky Ma. Hello, Franky.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh no, it's a pleasure. Thanks ever so much for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, so basically I was friends with I'm friends with some of the people that went on the 9/11 trip.
Yes.
Oh,
we've lost Franky. Hello, Franky, are you there?
Yeah, hi,
Yep.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. We lost you for a second then.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was contacted by people I knew that went on the 9/11 show, and I was toying with the idea about going on and then doing an On the Edge special about what actually goes on during the filming of the BBC.
Yes.
So I had several conversations with Claire McGawley, and we decided that the best thing for me to do was to actually get on the show. And oh, what a nightmare.
I mean, it was you, Franky, Scott, Brigitte, Darren and Ben were the participants of this particular road trip.
Yeah, and I mean, basically, I got interviewed, and I was 99% sure that I would get on if I applied, just because I do live in London and I'm fairly young. And it was really interesting interacting with the people that I did, because they kept calling me up as well, asking if I wanted to go on the 7/7 show or knew anyone that wanted to go on the 7/7 show that they were also doing.
Because your friend went on that one, didn't she?
Yeah, my mate Layla, they actually kind of just scoured, unbeknownst to me, they scoured through mine and my producer at Edge's, Claire McGawley's Facebook, looking for people. And Layla is really feisty, and you know, she's got some amazing pictures. She's a model, so she's really pretty. And they actually approached her and said, would you like to go on the 7/7 documentary that we're making? And she said, well, I don't know anything about it. And they said, don't worry. They said, don't worry, just read some articles about it and try and educate yourself about it a little bit.
Oh my word,
So-
that is good research by the BBC. Or sorry, Renegade, should I say?
Yeah, they were they were really desperate for people to go on the 7/7 show. And a lot of the people that are on the 7/7 show are actually, no offence to them, but the UFO leftovers. So people that applied, that they were talking to possibly go on the UFO show, they then, they had leftover people. So even one of the, oh gosh, I've forgotten her name, but the lady that they go and visit in Leeds is actually involved in the Sasha,
yeah, that was it, yeah.
Yeah, she's actually involved in the ufology field and didn't get to go on the UFO trip, but they gave her a part in the 7/7 one.
Well, I'm not surprised after she didn't, back up the official story on the 7/7 road trip.
Mm.
It was interesting
But,
to
I mean,
note
the thing
that,
is, yeah, go on, sorry, Alex.
it's interesting to note that on the 7/7 road trip, there were only 4 participants. Every other one within the series was 5.
Yeah, that's right.
It just shows you how much they struggle to actually get people. And I'm glad you said what you did about certain participants actually knowing nothing about the subject. Because...
Yeah, I mean, Layla, I absolutely love her to bits, and she's a mate of mine, and we were laughing as well because she's not a journalist. So I don't know why they stuck journalist on there.
Yeah,
But,
I was watching that earlier. They put her down as a journalist.
I know that, but she's a model and a tarot reader. Was just kind of amused at the whole thing. They wanted to go on because she thought it would be, a really interesting experience.
Yeah.
But obviously, I think if you're someone in Layla's position, which I think the majority of people who watch BBC are actually in the same kind of knowledge-wise position as she is, to actually be taken through the journey that's presented and to come to those conclusions, it is pretty much foregone.
Yes.
So unless you really know the arguments and and have really looked through.
No, I mean, to be honest, I was approached for the 771, as was Ian Crane, and it was basically, you've got to be joking. There is absolutely no way either of us were going to go on. The simple reason, if we had gone on, the conditions that we would have put in place would have meant they wouldn't have touched us with a barge pole. I mean, we would have basically wanted editorial approval of whatever the final cut was, and that would have never happened.
It's like Martin. He was asked to come on the road trip.
The UFO one, yes.
Yeah, and also Paul Joseph Watson from Infowars was also approached as well.
But again, I've got 20 years of ufology experience of being a UFO investigator. There's not a cat's howling chance they'd have had me on the show, because I would have shot down that presenter in flames within the first few minutes of watching that programme.
But seriously, it doesn't matter what
Short time from the SETI Institute. I would have loved it to see you go up against him, to be honest.
But seriously, guys, it doesn't matter how much experience you have or who goes on, because it doesn't make it through into the final edit.
The final edit,
there were no facts presented by anyone relevant. I mean, I had... I was surprised as well to see myself presented as a believer on the show, because I actually went on as a militant agnostic, and I'm not a believer. I just think, UFOs do exist. Having spent time with Nick Pope and looking after his files, there is certainly kind of, certain evidence to suggest that, something is going on, and I'm happy to say that, I don't necessarily have any conclusions as to what it is. But UFOs certainly do exist. And all the way through, the way the show was actually sold to me until I was on the show was that it was going to be very different from what it turned out to be. And I was assured that they had a new director and it was going to be completely different. I actually had lunch with the director and the series producer and went to Renegade, actually into their offices, and met everyone there and asked them questions about their conduct on the 9/11 show. So I decided in the end to just go in good faith, and I was able to, I was told to come up with a list of people that I would want representing my beliefs on the show. So I chose Leslie Kane, who is also an agnostic, and Nick Pope. So I actually chose really establishment figures to go on an establishment show.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, as the show went on, realising that actually everyone that I had chosen had been dropped from the lineup. And that's why I'm not really saying anything during the show, because I had nothing to say.
I must admit, whilst watching it, you did look pretty miffed, to be honest.
Do you know something? I was so pissed off. I mean, that as individuals, I like the people. I don't particularly dislike them. But I mean, on the first night, the second night I was there, I had such a massive row, and I actually called the director a mother, what.
I mean, by accident, you ended up with the schedule for the filming for those 10 days.
Yeah, when I saw the schedule and realised that everyone had been dropped, and why the hell have we got weapons training? What does that have to do with ufology? So,
apart from a scare tactic.
Just an effort to make people look, ridiculous.
Well, I mean, the bottom line was the real sort of absolute that they must have thought they were in heaven when they got the guy with the tinfoil hat, and it was like, I can't believe this. This is actually the level it's descended to. I mean, Franky, what you're saying there is basically, do you feel really let down by the treatment you received?
I feel that I have to take responsibility for my own actions. And as I said, I specifically went on because I've been hearing stories and I wanted to go through the experience myself so I could talk firsthand about what actually goes on. Yeah. So, as someone that works in alternative media and has kind of a foot in that pool, the best thing to do is to actually go through it. So whatever happened, all I can say, it's like meeting someone, having a one-night stand. They assure you that they don't have any STDs and they're going to pull out in time. So you're damn fold at the end of it. So I can't say I feel let down because I knew what I was going into before I went into it.
I mean, on the first day of filming, it was Bridget's day, wasn't it? Really, of her experience.
Yeah. And this is the thing: everybody got their own day,
Yeah.
apart from me. My day was dropped.
No, you didn't have a day. I mean, no one of your experts came on. They gave you Dr. Michael Shimmer from Skeptic magazine.
Yeah.
Oh, he came aboard the bus.
Michael Shermer,
Yeah.
it was actually, I have to say, Michael Shermer was absolutely really lovely, and he and I privately, just the two of us, went for a drink afterwards. But what you don't actually see, because it's edited in a strange way, that was actually the last day of filming.
Yeah.
So when I am losing my temper and saying 4.5 minutes, I was actually screaming at the BBC saying that this is it, that you've got 4.5 minutes of this last guest, because this show, when I'm saying, I'm going, this is bullshit, so I don't know if we can swear, but I'm going, this is bullshit. Yeah. I wasn't actually talking about Michael Shermer. I am actually talking about the show in general. Yeah, but it's edited to look like I'm having a real go at Michael. But no, he and I went out for a drink privately afterwards, and I was in shock. And I said to him, I feel as if I've been in a cult. It was just a bizarre experience for me. It was like being in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and Andrew Maxwell is like Nurse Ratched. He is absolutely Nurse Ratched, and he's so condescending. And I mean, I spoke on the Richard Dolan show about the fact that they suddenly halfway through this trip dropped on Brigitte that she'd be taking a lie detector test, which I just thought was
totally
really highly unethical. Yeah. To just drop that on someone. I mean, even they don't go to that level on the Jeremy Kyle show. At least on the Jeremy Kyle show, you're going there for a lie detector test.
Well, that's right.
And what actually happened was that it was agreed that Brigitte would take a lie detector test and Andrew Maxwell would take a lie detector test.
Oh, so that's why he pulled out. Says it all.
When the guy actually arrived, Maxwell's kind of going, yeah, but what are you going to ask me about? My favourite football team or what comedy I like? And the lie detector guy said, no, we're going to contact your partner or your wife and get her to ask you some questions. And it was then that he decided that we were putting too much pressure on Reed. And that's why when you see him go into the room, he says, I don't want to do this. That is what he says before he says, and I don't want you to do this. The first words out of his mouth, I don't want to do this. So this is about Andrew Maxwell, not wanting to have his privacy invaded.
After when I watched that final part that was broadcast, that's towards the end of the show, it just didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I was there sitting there thinking, what on earth is going on?
Well, obviously it's scheduled in. They've hired the guy. Yeah. They've hired the polygraph machine. Yeah. They've hired the room, everything to do it. So it's all planned. Yeah. And then to pull out at the last minute.
Exactly. It just didn't make sense to me as I was watching it. I thought that was really badly edited.
It was extremely badly edited. And to be honest, the director, Max Jordan, he had a completely different idea for the show and wanted to put in, I think he wanted to make it kind of like a hippie vibe. And we did so much of actually what went on, which was actually a lot of it was quite nice, though nothing ufology related went on. And we met some interesting characters. And he came to mine a few months later after the show, to get some more footage of me hanging up clothes and washing dishes or whatever. And he was really quite downtrodden and said that as far as he was concerned, a lot of the magic had gone out of the show. And a lot of the things he just wanted to make some kind of, hippie show. And this was like one of his first forays into reality television. He's now directing a piece that he's written about, I don't know, some kind of like crime period piece or something. So he's not really a reality director. But I mean, the thing is, I was told it was going to be a documentary. It's not a documentary.
It was plastered.
It's not even a reality show.
It was plastered as factual, and it should have been. I mean, come on, Button Moon did more for ufology than BBC Conspiracy Files.
So who hijacked the show? Who is responsible? Who is the one who is actually downtrodden the director, changed his original vision, and given us something which is obviously mainstream propaganda mantra?
It's not even, the thing is, it's not even good propaganda. It really was. And my friend said this to me, it's just dull. It was such a dull show, ours. And I have to
It's
say,
interesting you should say that, because I was saying about the creationist episode. The fact of the matter is, there was nothing in that that actually convinced me that the creationists was wrong. There was nothing that they actually was a slam dunk. Yeah, you got it wrong, guys, and oh my word. I mean, they were talking about the fact that there are such things as a creationist geologist who would have been prepared to go head to head with the mainstream geologist. And I thought,
Alex, Alex, there is. I mean, this is something that I've actually looked into. There are lots of creationist scientists, and whether you agree or disagree, it's so in depth and actually extremely scientific, and calls into things the validity of carbon dating. They have a proper argument. I don't necessarily agree with it, but there is a proper argument that wasn't presented.
But
and it was a complete whitewash. But what really just amused me is, when did creationism actually become a conspiracy theory?
That's what I couldn't figure.
At what point did that happen in our history? So overall, I think the series, the 9/11 one, the 7/7, the ufology one, which actually had nothing to do with ufology, and the creationist one, together, it's a very insidious type of propaganda that is being put out there. And watching the series as a whole, I felt I was part of something that was extremely nefarious.
do you think it's achieved its ambitions? Do you think it actually has achieved its goals, though?
No.
Whatever they may be.
No, not at all, Alex. Because first of all, young people, people that I know and even don't know so well, that are not involved in the alternative community, all said the same thing, which is that Andrew Maxwell comes across as extremely smug, unkind, extremely condescending.
I mean, I'm not a violent person, but 15 minutes in, I wanted to crack him one on the chin.
Babe, I had to spend 10 days with him.
Oh, I feel so sorry for you, Franky.
How did you manage that?
He actually got on with everyone really well, but he hated my guts. And what you don't actually see is my kind of like finishing statement that they have right at the end. Me and him had a massive slanging match, which was edited out, where he actually even accused me of having mental health issues because I showed concerns about some of the things that was happening to Brigitte, and also one of the other members had a bit of a psychotic break, and I just could not believe what was going on on this trip. And I pointed out that I thought they had a duty of care that goes way beyond what's just captured on camera when they know what's going on.
I mean, the Area 51 is a classic example of not having any duty of care and not having any ethics whatsoever, to knowingly cross a military borderline, knowing full well what is going to happen, and to put you guys in that situation, especially when one of your member of team is suffering from mental stress through the whole thing.
Well, precisely. And I mean, the great thing is, there's Andrew. He's so concerned about the lie detector test that he wants to protect one of the contestants, but at the same time has no problem pushing a bunch of people over into a restricted area where people possibly could have been shot or detained for like 6 months. I mean, luckily it didn't get that far.
I mean, you were encouraged here, I've got written down, to dance around and shout, "Show me your aliens."
Yeah.
So who actually encouraged you to do this?
I was even there because, like I said, as I was saying to Michael Shermer, I really felt as if I was part of a cult, and I was seemed to be the only person that had a problem or an issue with what was going on. But I mean, Alex, you and I have worked for Edge. Can you imagine if we'd have turned around and said to the powers that be, for us to get away with some of the stunts that these people pulled, they would have thought we were on crack cocaine.
And we'd have been disowned, and it's like, you can forget that. Come home now.
Yeah.
They would have just been. They would have just thought that we were on crack.
Yeah.
And another thing as well, which I had a real issue with, and it was brilliant. Michael, though I don't necessarily agree with everything he believes, let me know a piece of really relevant information, which was that he and all the other contributors, the kind of scientific skeptic minds, had also been invited on as part of a documentary. They had no idea until they actually got there that they were going to be accosted by a bunch of ufologists,
Right.
challenging their beliefs. So, the Renegade.
So it's dishonesty on every side that we're seeing here. Nobody knows exactly what the underlying game plan is.
Well, there's a very, very good point you brought up with this on the Richard Dolan's show about you thinking you'd dropped your schedule, and when you picked up a bit of paper, put it in your handbag. A couple of days later, I know that my handbag's a walking skip. I know what it's like. Cleaning out your handbag, and you actually came across an email to one of the guests. That was there, and there was a very interesting experience with that guest.
Yeah, so, I mean, basically, Felisa Wolf-Simon, who is a kind of leading microbiologist.
Which didn't make the final cut, I might add.
She didn't make the final cut at all, but, I mean, she has worked for NASA. She's extremely well known. She's, like, one of the top of her field, essentially. And I was thrilled to get to actually meet some of these people, and I was extremely excited about getting to meet her, and I followed her work for several years. I just remember kind of like watching her, and this is before I knew that she had no idea why she was going to be there. And when one of the contestants started kind of asking about UFOs and the directors prompting her to answer, I just remember her kind of looking around and looking at him and saying, "Are we really going to go there? Are we really going to go there?" Because that's not why she thought that she was coming on the show.
So they're misleading you as participants, and they're misleading the potential experts that they're having on.
I have to say, in a way, welcome to the world of television.
Well, yeah.
I mean, that is the way it works. I'm not particularly upset about that. And I have to say, the people that actually worked on our show, all of them were freelance people. So no one permanently works for Renegade. To a certain extent, that is just the way TV actually does work, and it's classed as entertainment. It's not classed as a serious show. But why on earth they are doing really serious subjects like, for example, 7/7, 9/11, proper tragedies, and dressing it up as entertainment for the masses, it's just really beyond me.
Right, it's not,
well, again,
it's just spoon feeding the lie, isn't it?
What you've got to do is look at it and say, well, what is the only way you can make sense of it is actually putting in place an objective that would fit the way things have been done. And I think Abby clicked on it earlier in the show, where the objective was to discredit anybody who takes an opposing view to consensus reality. And
Absolutely.
I think that's the key of it. And I mean, I'll back Franky up here.
That is it. I mean, because I have to say, if someone asked me to point the finger at someone and say, who is responsible? Yeah, for the debacle of what happened on filming, I would have to say that the director was overall the one deemed responsible. But Max, absolutely lovely bloke, don't have a problem with him. Met lots of people at Renegade, free-thinking, sparky people just doing their jobs, don't have an issue with them.
Yep.
It's only when you look at the series as a whole and you look at the fact that the BBC is now being financed in part by Europe, and you put it together with some of the other alternative, research that people do, it's extremely nefarious. And it is...
Yep.
It's basically saying to people, saying to the young, if you don't accept kind of a materialist, 5 cents reality, where you trust in the government and the authority and powers that be, you're going to get battered down. And the fact as well that they pick, and Andrew Maxwell, I have to say, I didn't get on with him personally, but he's all right, and he was quite funny. But again, they've picked someone who's got, Andrew's been doing stand-up comedy since he was 17, and he's 37 now. So that's 20 years experience of professionally batting people down and making them look stupid, because that's what stand-up comedians do.
Yeah.
If people help them.
Perfect person to be the host of this show, then.
Yeah. So just bat anyone down with a cynical line, or make them feel a bit ridiculous if they're going to have something to say. Though, as I said, it really didn't matter what information you presented. If you said anything factual, it was going to get edited out. That's why both the director and Andrew were having a go at me because I just kept presenting like factual information and not talking about personal experience. But, you know, the experience I had years and years ago is neither here nor there. But they told me I had to actually have my own personal experience to be able to go on the show in the first place. And it's not something that I've ever even talked about before or would talk about again, because it really is...
It's personal. Now, some of these experts that you had on, I would just like to talk to. Now, first you went to go and see Seth Shawshank at the SETI Institute.
Seth Shostak, yeah.
And, I felt so sorry for Brigitte, because you could see it really hurt her. It really, really put doubt in her mind, and she really made to feel that her experience wasn't real.
Well, you know... Seth isn't massively popular with a lot of people. And I have to say, I don't judge all, you know, some scientists are fantastic and they're free thinking and they weren't condescending. And I have to say, Felisa Wolf-Simon and Michael Shermer, once I'd met them in person and watched them engage with people, brilliant, absolutely lovely, would have them around my house anytime, absolutely adore them. And Michael Shermer even sent me a lovely email when the show came out, laughing about the fact that I was flipping him off 2 minutes before I'd met him. And he was saying, you know...
To be fair, Franky, I mean, I would be the same, to be honest.
Well, I'd seen research that he'd done on Roswell and found it sadly lacking. But, you know, he is a nice guy. But Seth Shostak, oh my goodness, what a pompous arsehole. And vile to Brigitte.
I know. I mean, you could see her welling up, and it was just so painful to watch.
She had a fantastic daylight UFO sighting, and
there he was. Another person as well in the car with her.
Yes. Which I don't think they actually stressed in the show. This wasn't just her having a sighting by herself, and that's what makes it of such interest in the community, that this is a sighting by multiple people. But again,
that's interesting. You should say that, because that never came over to me.
No,
the whole thing seemed like it was her and her alone who'd seen it.
Yeah, no, it wasn't included in the show for some reason. That part of the story was.
I wonder why.
Creative editing at its best.
So, yeah. So basically, you know. I mean, Seth Shostak is known for his kind of fights with METI, because it's kind of SETI versus METI.
Yeah.
The big question of, should we listen in or send information out? But again, it's completely different from the field of ufology. It just has nothing to do with it. We have to listen to him anyway.
I love the point that Darren made in this part, because it cut to him, a clip to him, and you could see he was talking with you guys, and lip reading was quite funny of his comment. But I like the comment that he made about that there are parts of space that the Hubble telescope are not allowed to point at due to NASA's request. And now he didn't answer this, and this wasn't addressed at all. And I thought that was a very valid question by Darren.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we were filmed for about 12 hours. I'd say, you know, it was kind of like 12-hour long days. I mean, we would have breaks, but we were being filmed so much of the time, and some of the conversations that happened were really interesting. And of course, none of that makes it into the show.
No. Neither does some of the more horrific stuff that you went through there.
Well, I have to say, in a way, rightly so.
Well, yes.
I'm glad it didn't. And I mean, there was one participant who's kind of had the same beliefs as kind of David Icke fans. About, you know, kind of the Rothschilds, etc., but didn't voice it in those terms, and just kept saying the Jews are running the world and the Jews are aliens. And I was quite pleased that none of that made it into the show.
I'll tell you what, I was hoping you were going to bring this up, because I've got just the perfect response for that. Just so we don't get called anti-Semitic on this show, you do not have to be Jewish to be a Zionist.
No.
Yeah, Biden is a Zionist, the current vice president of the USA, but he's not Jewish.
No, you do not have to be Jewish to be a Zionist.
Yeah, but you know, when you take someone
at face value of what they're saying in words, yes, of course,
they're saying it can be extremely offensive. And I have to say, I don't know where I stand on all of that, because you know, I have come across some people, not many, but some in the alternative field that I think are anti-Semitic or do say kind of things like the Jews are running Hollywood or the Jews are running the world, and it certainly makes me uncomfortable to be around. But yeah, there was one great point as well where this same person called me a draconian hybrid. I was an alien, and I was thinking, please don't let that get onto the show. But another expert we met, PZ Myers, who is a
biologist.
Yeah. And it was just amazing. It was just, by that time the show was getting more and more bizarre, and we were filming in a taxidermist's office, so there were all of these kind of like butts and heads of animals sticking out from all over.
So you could actually tell a BBC film crew to get stuffed, is that right?
Oh, I like it.
That's why they pay you the big bucks.
I'm just glad you weren't seeing it from their point of view, because I wouldn't want to stick your head where that is.
It was just bizarre, and his knowledge outside his own particular field of expertise was just non-existent. He'd never even heard of the Nag Hammadi Library, which is, questionably one of the greatest kind of like archaeological finds of the last 100 years. So just absolutely no imagination, just seemed kind of terrified of us standing around and asking him questions. And for me personally, the extraterrestrial hypothesis is one, the interdimensional hypothesis is one, the fact that it's like a kind of nefarious government or people beyond the government kind of scheme is another. And as an agnostic, I feel that, until we have definite proof of what it is, I'm happy to consider all the theories, but I'm not going to argue passionately with a biologist about why he says that aliens couldn't possibly come to Earth and they wouldn't have eyes in their head if they did come.
But now another expert that they got
on our side. Sorry, can I just say, the experts we had on our side, I mean, some of them were just, again, completely bizarre. I mean, what's her name? Annie Jacobs.
Annie Jacobs, yeah, CIA, and she was saying that this UFOs are a good cover for CIA black ops.
Yeah, but what she also was saying as well, I don't know how much of it made it into the show, it's like her book was made it onto the bestseller list, and the end chapter is all about how the communists were sending UFOs over with deformed teenage bodies in.
That was it, yeah.
This was the most ludicrous situation I've ever come across.
Yeah, but Annie Jacobson isn't someone that's taken seriously by the UFO community, or even people that study the history of Area 51. I mean, lovely woman, and she came onto the bus, bless her, absolutely terrified because she'd obviously just then be briefed that we were all going to attack her.
Oh my word!
I know, and I mean, she's kind of like an editor of the Los Angeles Times, and she's obviously got friends in publishing, and she's written a book and sold it and is probably having, a great time. Good for her, but not someone that's taken seriously by the UFO community. And then John Lear, who is just left of left field. Again, it's not someone that's taken particularly seriously by the
ex-CIA, and he was explaining that there's two types of aliens, friendly and non-friendly, J-rods and greys, and again he's going down the David Icke theory of the moon is a giant spaceship, or there's people living in or on the moon.
There's people living in the moon. The moon was manufactured in Jupiter. Just really bizarre things, and of course there's no way to actually check out what he's saying. But it was just so frustrating for me because before I went, I had spoken and I'd gotten what I felt was sorry, I've forgotten the name of the guy that's hosting the show.
Andrew Maxwell?
No, your show.
Martin, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, Martin, I felt, I'm talking to you now because as someone that's been in the field of ufology for 20 years, I felt that I picked a really good bunch of people. And before I went, I had secured, and they said that they'd be happy to come on or contribute in any which way the BBC wanted them to, which was Leslie Kane, Nick Pope, Richard Dolan, Paola Harris, Peter Robbins, and John Burrows, because also I wanted to cover the Rendlesham aspect as well, which of course was dropped.
A shame that was dropped because that...
Pretty good core of people.
I think the thing we haven't actually addressed here is exactly what is going on in terms of the editing here, and the choice of guests, and the choice of theories to explore. This was very evident in 9/11, ditto in 7/7.
Yeah.
Can't really say in the creationist one, but it's definitely true in the UFO one as well.
Well,
The
in
objective was to set up straw men.
Side for the creationist theory at all.
And the basic bottom line is the idea was to set up straw men. And for those who don't know, straw men are obscure lines of theory which the majority don't buy into, and by their very nature are very easily pulled over and dismissed. And it's guilt by association. And again, I think this has got a lot to do with why there was a creationist episode in the series. The creationism one is easy for the majority to pull over. The fact that this production company couldn't do it is very telling. But the objective was to show by saying, well, we've shown you these silly theories, which are obviously all sort of right there on the fringes, and we've pushed them over. So consequently, everything else must have been fallen over as well, and you don't believe any of that either. Not that you've heard any of it about it on this show.
I mean, a classic example with this from talking to Franky yesterday is the expert testimony from Chris O'Brien, who was looking into the animal mutilation aspect of this. Now,
Very interesting.
You said he gave an absolute brilliant piece on this, but
Yeah, brilliant, because that's an area that I've actually never investigated before. And he gave a very convincing, factual presentation. He was with us for, several hours. And in the end, they were just getting him to kind of, say what he thought it might be. And by this time,
in a kind of
he's
relaxed,
and,
laughing and joking way. Yeah.
Yeah, in a relaxed, laughing, joking way. And so he was saying, well, it could be this, it could be that. He's just showing that he's open-minded and not locked into one particular belief, but just considering the evidence and leaving it open. And then kind of off the cuff, he goes, it could be time-travelling chefs from the future. And that's
what made the cut.
that makes it into the show with absolutely none of the factual evidence. But I mean, again, this is great news that the BBC are now making these shows. Even though it doesn't seem like it's good news, it's brilliant, because they're now someone is feeling in the position that they have to make these shows.
It shows
Because
that
more and more
somebody
people
in the
are
establishment are
questioning
scared.
the
Somebody is
status quo.
scared to produce these shows in the first place. It shows that groups like us, we've got them running. Otherwise, they wouldn't have bothered putting out this 1 hour show in the first place.
They're on the back foot, and this is, they might consider it a small victory, but it's really not, and it's just fantastic. The independent media is just getting stronger and stronger all the time, and more people are starting up, radio shows, doing YouTube videos, putting out real information to people.
I mean, that's what it's all about, is informing people as much as we can, so they can't get away with this crap over and over and over again.
Yeah. So they're going to continue to do it, but the great thing is, less and less people are watching that type of television. And even if they are watching it, they're not believing it. No one who is a believer is then not going to be a believer because of that show, and vice versa. It's just fluff. It's nothing. And with regards to the 9/11 and 7/7 shows, which are obviously more serious, I was just absolutely aghast at the fact that, for example, in the 7/7 show, there didn't seem to be any emphasis on the fact that there has been no proper inquiry into 7/7, and that families of the people who have died and injured have asked for this, and they weren't able to pursue it because their legal aid was denied. And every effort
has now
has
been made against law to actually have an independent inquiry.
Yeah.
Which is
So-
absolutely atrocious. I mean, it goes beyond atrocious.
Yeah, because, I'm not part of the truth movement or any movement, but I do believe in people's democratic rights. And, our rights are being taken away on a daily basis. And I know that human beings tend to act with whatever is in their interest, But I think by the time most people realise that this isn't in their interest, their rights will be gone.
I mean, look at it. I mean, you say one wrong thing on Facebook now, you can go to jail for 3 months. That is a dangerous precedent to set because it is literally abolishing free speech.
Yeah.
You might not agree with what someone puts online or says on Facebook, off the cuff comment, but you have no right to imprison them for it.
You know, and
it was intriguing because I highlighted the fact that this was what was going on. That that Facebook were in that scenario. That you'd got the likes of the CIA patrolling around, seeing where you put a word out of place, and somebody basically posted back and said, "Oh well, this is no different to when people used to publish pamphlets in centuries gone by." And I thought,
oh, so
really?
They're not gonna lock you up. They're gonna burn you at the stake for your views instead.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, yeah, so what you're saying is this was done differently beforehand, but it suddenly sort of makes it acceptable because it's online? I couldn't quite get what the argument was. I bring it up just hoping that someone else can sort of excavate into the minds of such individuals and tell me what the dickens that was all about.
I've got a comment comes through on Facebook. Let's see, from Helen Darcy. She's been listening to the show.
Hello, Helen. Nice
Hello,
to hear from
Helen.
you.
Helen.
So I'll just read out what she's put here. I do believe in UFOs, having seen some myself, along
UFOs do exist.
Of
I mean,
course.
that's a readily accepted
exactly,
fact. It just
along
means-
with
Yeah.
2 scientists. But I do hope they never land, as I believe that we are too trigger happy and would shoot first and ask questions later.
Well, if Obama gets his way with the Fast and the Furious campaign, then the Americans won't have any guns to shoot them with, so they'll be all right to land.
Well, they can land in my back garden,
Yeah.
and I'll invite them in. I won't shoot them. But yeah, I don't know.
It's a good comment.
It is a good
I can
comment.
see where
Yeah.
she's coming from.
Yeah.
I like to think with the studies that I've done within the field of ufology is that if you do shoot them, it will have no effect because this is obviously down to my own personal theory, is that we're looking at an interdimensional energy operating in the higher frequencies. They cross down through, so you can fire any number of missiles at them and it won't actually make any impact because we're looking at an ethereal object and it can solidify when it comes through into this dimension. So Franky, I'd like to know what your opinion, your personal opinions is about exactly what a UFO is, because we've all of course got our own different opinions.
Well, a UFO is an unidentified flying object. It's just something that hasn't been identified yet, and they do exist. I mean, the reason I wanted to go on one of the reasons I wanted to go on the show, as I say, was because I wanted Leslie Kane on the show. Her foreword of her latest book on the subject was written by John Podesta, who was Bill Clinton's chief of staff and the transitional chief of staff between Bush and Obama,
Yeah.
which makes him like the third most important person in the White House. UFOs are taken extremely seriously at those levels, and there are people, even the ex-Canadian minister, there are so many pilots and generals that have gone on record who are worried, who are saying this is an issue, a defense security issue, because things are flying over our airspace and we don't know what it is. So, and again, I mean, going back to the Rendlesham Forest case, or the Bentwaters case, which happened just over 30 years ago now, the men involved are still completely traumatized over what happened to them. So whether it's of extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or some other nefarious thing, these things are happening. And there seems to have been a taboo on any rational discourse taking place.
I think someone's
over
lit
the
the fire
issue.
under Martin.
About the defence significance issue, and I know this is something Nick Polk talks about on each documentary he's on and at the conferences
I'm
does.
afraid I'm from the Nick Pope ilk.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
okay, this is brilliant then, because there's a discussion I can have with you here, and I'd like to see what your viewpoint
Go
is
for it,
on this.
Go for it.
Right, you're saying this is a major defence significance issue, yeah, that they're in our airspace.
No, wait. let me just make clear. I'm saying that is what a lot of people who are high up in the military and government are saying.
Yep, and this is where we can rip them apart. Because UFOs have been seen for the last 30,000 years. Even historians will tell us this. The cave paintings are there. It's fact. That's not under any dispute. So why, when they're hovering over our airspace, why on earth are they causing any kind of threat? They're not hampering our society in any way, shape or form. They are appearing as miraculous wonders in our skies. Why should they be seen as any threat? That's just a question I'm throwing out there for our listeners as well, of course.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, on the one hand, you are absolutely right. And that's what the opposition has used as an argument as to why there needs to be no proper further investigation into it. So
in some respects, when the MOD comes out and says we are stopping investigations to UFOs because we do not consider them to be a threat anymore, I actually go along with that stance. I think, well, yeah, I quite agree with the MOD there. Of course, one thing they're not taking is that next step forward to say they are a reality, we know they exist, but don't worry about them, they're not going to cause us any harm.
We have yet to have that day of disclosure.
Maybe one day, who knows?
Don't hold your breath.
Except, Martin, I have to disagree with you there because to some extent they do cause harm. I mean, for a lot of people, these sightings are, dramatic. For some people, it is also traumatic.
There's no evidence, though, to say that these are UFOs that are causing these traumatic experiences. I appreciate lights in the sky are seen before, obviously we're going into abduction here, before an abduction experience, but there's no actual evidence that says that that particular individual was actually abducted by a UFO. Now, I'm not saying any of us are right, any of us are wrong. At the end of the day, we just do not know. But I do believe they have had a genuine traumatic experience, and I would actually put that down more to the military actually committing this horrific abduction experience and actually then blaming it on the UFOs. Because they want us to fear the UFOs. They want us to be afraid of UFOs.
I've actually just had a question come through on an email on Facebook. Well, not a question, a comment on someone's belief structure, saying they want to remain anonymous for this, saying that he thinks the whole abduction experience was a military MK Ultra type program. Let me just see if I'm reading this right. To test drive the microchip on people.
And you know something? I don't rule that out at all. And this is why, whatever it is, I'd like to see far more investigation into it and it being taken seriously.
Again, I mean, John Mack, unfortunately, he passed away, I believe, in 2005. He came over doing some research into the crop circles, going back to London to take the flight back to USA. He actually got killed in a car crash. Very unfortunate.
He was run over by a car.
He was one of the world's. He was one of the world's leading
medical school. Just for people who don't know.
That's right.
Sorry, carry on, Martin.
Sorry, he was one of the world's leading figures in alien abductions.
Absolutely.
And so obviously he was doing some research here that was obviously putting the frighteners on the establishment. And obviously his research needs to be taken further. It needs to be progressed further. I do believe abductions is a very real experience and it does need a much more investigation.
But is it a physical experience or is it an OBE type experience?
Personally, if you're asking me, I would say it's happening on an astral level, not a physical level.
So it's the consciousness that is being whisked away
rather than the physical body. I do not believe for 1 minute a physical body can actually pass through a solid window or any solid object. The laws of physics, as we understand it, cannot allow for that to happen. And then for the body to go back down into the bed, I'm sorry, I just do not buy that a UFO is flying above the house. A physical body is then taken on board that craft. The craft then flies away to wherever, does the experiments, flies back above the house, lowers the body back down into the bed. On a physical level, I just don't buy it. I'm sorry.
Well, that ties into Brigitte's experience that she later revealed later on in the show, about her being taken from her car, going through the dashboard, and having this vision of being in this field with these ethereal but flesh-coloured creatures.
That's right.
And being handed a child.
That's right. Yeah, again, this is very much like a vision, as it were, or a hallucinatory experience. A very real experience, don't get me wrong. I do believe it's a genuine astral experience on the spiritual level, not the physical level. And this is one thing I think many ufologists do get wrong. They're putting the abduction experience down as a physical phenomena. And I believe this is where it's going hideously wrong.
What are your thoughts, Franky?
Well, all I can say really is, having lived with Nick Pope and having kind of full access to all of the cases and the files for 3 years, we didn't live together romantically, but we are close friends, and I continue to kind of look after the files, etc. now that he's in the States. The number of people that approached him, the more high up they were, and we're talking about doctors, people who work in intelligence, politicians. They absolutely would never go public with their experience because of the ridicule, and they were worried that they'd have their children taken away, or that they'd lose their jobs in some cases. I mean, there was a particularly well-known surgeon who absolutely could not ever go on record and talk about his experiences. Whatever it is absolutely real to those people, and I'm not sure that it can all be explained, as Michael Shermer, lovely though he is, suggests, by kind of, a neurological condition. So, again, just like to see more studies and more support for these people. And also as well, I just think at the moment, if you are someone that's had one of these experiences, most people are too afraid to actually go to their GPs for fear they're going to end up being sectioned or, have a mental health issue put on their records. And so they tend to kind of look around the internet. And I just think it's actually not necessarily in all cases a very good idea, because a lot of these kind of regression therapists, etc., are barely licensed. They're not regulated. And I mean, from my own personal experience, when I had mine, I actually met John Ronson, who was extremely lovely to me. He's the guy that writes about a book called Them and Men Who Stare at Goats, etc.
Yeah.
And he put me on to David Icke. And I had, wonderful 2-hour conversation with David Icke, and he was extremely kind. But he filled in my whole worldview for me.
Yeah.
Over, this is your experience and this is what's happened to you.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that people are allowed to come forward and be in a safe environment. Because a lot of the people that go through this are traumatized, especially when it comes to the alien abduction aspect of it. Not so much seeing a UFO, but the actual abduction cases.
I mean, of course, it's got to be a traumatic experience for anybody, and definitely leaves some deep scars, either emotional or
people
psychological.
suffering from people suffering from post-traumatic stress, and you saw how Bridget was still shaken up that day when we went back to where she'd had her sighting.
Yeah.
But, that I do wish this subject could just be taken seriously, so that the support that people need is there for them and untainted by people who have already formed a belief system over what it is, for example.
And for those who want to just ridicule people that have had experiences or who want to find out more about it.
Well, that's why, do you know something? That's what really annoyed me about the show that I was on as well. And one of the reasons, because I was going to do and maybe doing an actual show on this, but the reason I felt I had to come out right now and go on so many local stations, etc., is because I feel extremely badly that I've been involved in something where, again, if you have one of these experiences, you're ridiculed. And, certainly mine was painted as a kind of like ridiculous thing. And it's horrible for the people that are actually having these experiences that you're being laughed at. And that's one of the major issues I had while, I was on the show and on that trip.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm
Alex, sorry, hon.
I'm still here. It's just I'm trying to sort of, I'm conscious of.
I just looked at
I don't know if
the computer there then for a second, and I couldn't see you on there, and I was thinking, oh my god, have we cut him off?
I'm just sort of listening to the debate, and I actually my presentation on Facts in Screen Fiction touches on the whole debacle that surrounded the closing of Project Blue Book at the end of the 1960s, which was the American military's actual investigations and notes and case books on UFO sightings. And it's worth probably chucking this into the mix to say that what they did was they had the Condon Committee formed, run by a gentleman called Edward Condon of the University of Colorado. Yeah. Now he was the chair of it, and they thought everyone thought he was a safe pair of hands. He was a guy who would be objective and would basically sort of follow the line as it was. Unbeknownst to all of them, he basically been sort of involved in all the communist witch hunts, and they thought he was a sound guy for the simple reason that he seemed to have stood his ground. But it is one of these things that he was also let off the hook. So you have to ask what deal was made at that point, and what on earth inspired him to become the chair of a committee on a subject that he wasn't particularly interested in. So I quote from Jerome Clark from the UFO book, Encyclopedia of the Extraterrestrial, which was from 1998. And basically says that, bearing in mind that the Condon Committee only began their work in October 1966, bear the date in mind, October 66, in late January 1967, Condon said in a lecture that he thought the government should not study UFOs because the subject was nonsense, adding, "But I'm not supposed to reach that conclusion for another year." And this is the thing.
Does, doesn't it?
It tells you everything. And when the report actually came out in January 1969, and Condon's report, there'd been rumours that this guy was come out and toe the party line, and this ties up with a comment that was made earlier. But the actual line, and this is a quote from the Times on the 11th of January 1969, actually from within the report, it says, "Nothing has come from the study of UFOs over the past 21 years that has added to scientific knowledge." Doesn't say anything about whether they're real or imagined. It's just that they don't add to the scientific knowledge, so that's a good idea for stopping looking into them.
I have found this time and time again through my research. The official statements, you actually read what the official statements is. Very, very rarely are they stating UFOs do not exist. They're merely saying things like that, or they pose no threat to our airspace. They're not actually saying they don't exist. You've got to almost read between the lines. So eventually, at some point in the future, they can come back to us perhaps and say, "We never lied to you. We just merely stated what we thought at the time. We never said they never existed."
Well,
sins of omission.
Yeah, know for a fact that through the
declassification. Yes.
And you know of a case that Pewford
yes.
actually researched, and you petitioned the MOD. Why wasn't this?
We at the Plymouth UFO Research Group sent to the MOD a fantastic report. It's actually on the Haunted Devon website. You don't need to be a member of Haunted Devon to see it. It's there on the front page of the website. It's a fantastic report. It's of a UFO that was seen in 1971 over a UFO by 1,400 commandos. We interviewed the Lieutenant Colonel who was in charge of the military exercise. He's obviously since retired when he spoke to us. And so the MOD were fully aware. They photographed it, and the guy handed us the roll of negatives. All of them were all confiscated. All the photographs and film footage was all confiscated. He held on to his roll of film. He handed it to us, and you clearly see a UFO, and there's 4 fantastic images, and they're on the Haunted Devon website. The point is that the MOD were fully aware of this, and it was 3 days after that sighting, his officer in command came back to him and said, "We can confirm what you and everybody else saw over Cyprus was a definite UFO." That was fantastic to hear that. Now, the MOD are fully aware. and obviously it did not appear in the National Archives that was released. Therefore, everything that's released every 2 years through the National Archives by the MOD on what they have on UFOs is very carefully selected about what goes in there and what doesn't. But actually, there's another question come through from Helen.
Really? Sorry, that's fascinating. Do you know something? I didn't know that, and it would be great to get the details of that.
Right, okay.
Because I'm going to chase up Nick personally.
Right, go
why that is.
to the Haunted Devon website. Okay.
Yeah.
On the front page.
www.haunted-devon.co.uk.
Yep.
Cool. Get the plug in there. Yeah.
Go to the front page, and then under, I think it's under features or something like that, and then there's a drop-down menu, then it goes into ufology, and then it'll be from there that you can see Cyprus UFO. There's the full report of it, and the MOD, we sent this off to the MOD, so they're fully aware, and obviously at the time when it happened, the MOD were fully aware that this happened over Cyprus, because the WHO commands and chiefs were fully aware of this situation, yet it never made the release in the archives. So I'm going to ask a question to Alex, actually. This is from Helen. She's saying about my response about the physical, spiritual aspect of the abductions. But I think this is more to do with Alex's field because of his sci-fi background and his love of Star Trek. Here we go. Surely, if they do exist, their technology is way more advanced than ours. So maybe they have the means of transporting the physical body. I know Star Trek is fictional, but couldn't something like teleporters be a reality in their world? What's your thoughts on that, Alex?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, it's Star Trek. You only have to look at the Star Trek original series communicator and realise it was the Motorola phone from about 10 years ago.
In the next generation, they have tablets as well.
This is it. All changes, and guess what happens? There's this little sort of lag. I mean, there's several issues here. First off, there's a lot of discussion about the fact that UFOs are potentially, some of them at least, are black ops technology. Yeah. The simple thing we know about black ops technology is that if it does exist, which I'm sure there is plenty of evidence to say that it is, it will be at least 50 years ahead of what we have in the mainstream commercial stuff. Now, just think about it. That's the equivalent of thinking how things were at the beginning of the 1960s to how they are now. And if you think what technology was like then compared to what it is now, huge leaps ahead.
Who's still got vinyl records?
Actually, Kit was on the decks here, the show before, before the Oblivion Substantial. Kit was on here with his decks, and he was mixing it all up with all his vinyls. So.
Not off, that's what we like to hear. We like to get that vinyl out.
He had a bit of reggae on the go.
And this is the thing. Some technology never goes out of fashion, but I'm absolutely convinced that the nature of reality, and if we have quantum scientists actually sort of getting their head around it, I have absolutely no doubt that even if I haven't got it now, they will have soon.
Well, I mean, you look at HARP and Project Bluebeam and all the rest of it. Yeah, that's miles ahead of what we are supposed to be aware of.
Exactly. So, transporter technology, absolutely. Why do we suddenly see UFOs disappear just like that at the click of the fingers? And it's like, well, I saw it hovering and then it disappeared. Well, yeah, it probably transported. It doesn't have to be just human beings. It could be the whole craft that could go.
Yeah, I mean, I remember while I was over in Washington getting to meet Major Milton Torres, and he was ordered to shoot down a UFO. He was part of the United States Air Force, but based over here in 1957. Mm-hmm. And you can find him online. He gave a press conference as well about his experience. And he'd been sworn to secrecy all of these years. It was only when the files started being released that he was actually allowed to talk about it. So just the emotional and psychological toll that keeping that secret had done to him for so many years. An incredibly grounded, wonderful person, went on to become a rocket scientist. But he was ordered to shoot down a UFO in 1957, and the technology he describes that this craft must have had is still something that we do not know about today. And if you take into account, for example, I don't know if you guys have seen or heard of Ray Kurzweil.
Yeah.
He did a documentary called, he was in a documentary about him called The Transcendent Man. And he talks about the rate of technology speeding up, so it's kind of double the amount next year. So essentially, even though it's kind of 50 years ahead, the rate that technology actually doubles, it's more like 300 or 400 years ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the rate of development.
I mean, I would have said at least the military, Black Ops, all the high things up there that we're not supposed to know about. I would have said it was about 80 years ahead of what we know. But yeah.
No, I think that's absolutely the point. The problem is you have people using their definition of what's possible to define what might be possible 50 years hence. And the thing is, it's difficult for them to grasp the fact that you are not being told the full picture.
I mean, if you look at David Wilcock's work and all the claims that he has, apparently associations with whistleblower Black Ops and all the rest of it, and all the fantastical things that he comes out with, may sound completely science fiction to us, but who's to say that they are not reality? It's just we don't know about them.
Well, this is precisely it, and I mean, you can go back decades, hundreds of years, whatever. Look at the stuff that H.G. Wells was coming with, and Jules Verne, and
1984. That's all I can say.
Well, exactly. I mean, not so much on a technological point of view, but I mean, sociology says
Definitely.
1984 is the playbook, and
You're right, Franky. There.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just listening in. I'm having a really good time. Yeah.
No, I just thought you were coughing away there. I thought you were all
Oh,
right.
no, that's David.
Oh, is that David, is it? Sorry,
Yeah,
Alex, to disturb you.
I've got
No.
my mate staying with me at the moment, David Shayler, the ex-MI5 spy, not spy, agent, whistleblower guy. That was him coughing that you could hear.
So, what does David think of the show so far? Any opinions, any comments?
David's not actually listening to the show.
Oh.
He's reading a book on Jack the Ripper behind me. But yeah, if you want to talk about intelligence and things like that, I can put him on, if you like. He was just coming up to get a light for his fag. That's why he
Right.
couldn't coffee.
I think we can only spare about 10 more minutes on air because we have kind of gone half an hour over.
Let me put him on because
Yeah,
he'll have
sure.
some interesting things to say. David, you come on. Listen, guys, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh,
and
it's
Alex, lovely to hear your
Absolutely
Thank you.
wonderful,
Good
Yeah,
Frankie.
it's been brilliant.
It's
Yeah.
been brilliant.
let's
And
catch up.
welcome on
what you
any
guys are
time,
doing
sweetheart.
is- what you guys are doing is brilliant, and so pleased to, in some small way, be a part of it. But anyway, here's David.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so
Thank
much,
you.
Frankie.
Hi there.
Hello, David.
Hi, Dave.
Welcome to
Hi,
102 Devon.
Thank you. How are you?
We're all right. Yeah, tonight we've been talking about we've been talking about a whole host of things, really, haven't we, Alex?
Well, I think from David's point of view, considering the subject is sort of veered into sort of UFO and Black Ops territory, David, what's your take on what may be possible behind closed doors that the British public and the rest of the world don't know about in terms of technological advances, and are UFOs a Black Ops operation, and what might be happening that we're in terms of technological breakthroughs that we're being kept from?
Yeah, I mean, when I work in MI5, I point out that always behind the scenes they're going to be 20, 30 years ahead. I mean, I joined MI5 in 1991 and was shown this surveillance thing, basically, which was for tracking. If you got put something on a target's car, you could track them literally to their front door on a big screen, and that's now known as sat-nav, basically. But sat-nav didn't come out for another 10, 15 years or whatever. So it's a good example. That's one simple example, basically, where they're ahead of the curve on very simple technology. Now, what goes on at places like GCHQ and the National Security Agency, God only knows. I mean, when I used to go there, they used to show us an organogram. At one point, I stuck my hand up and said, well, hang on, the section I work with is not even on the organogram. What's going on? I was told to shut up, basically.
Yeah.
So there's kind of layers of secrecy that people don't realise. And MI5, unfortunately, in terms of the intelligence agencies, is pretty low down the pecking order. I tend to think that all this, from my own conclusions of research into all sorts of vast range of stuff, is at the very least, there's always been a body of human beings, call them secret societies or whatever, who have kept technology for themselves, basically. And that's happened throughout human history. And the reasons they've done that are absolutely obvious, because if you don't have the technology, you think these people are capable of magic. So they've used it for all sorts of manipulation of the population and everything else. And, I mean, I stick my neck out on 9/11 and say that because the Hutchinson effect is observed that day in New York, and there is no other reason for that being observed, that a laser was fired. That was a piece of prima facie evidence that a laser was fired, which is consistent with other experiments where they fired lasers. And similarly, I put forward the idea that there weren't planes, there were missiles surrounded by holograms. And again, people try to poo-poo that, but if they've got satellites up there that can fire lasers, I'm sure they've got satellites up there with the missile acting as an interference thing to create a hologram just for a brief few seconds, so people look up and see something that looks like a plane. Basically.
I mean, there is a 17-second delay within the live broadcast and what happened, and so many people have seen that they said a missile. But, I mean, the no planes theory, I mean, it's something that I will get on board with, because a plane just doesn't melt into a building. It just doesn't.
Yeah,
no matter which way you look at it, it will not melt. A solid object will not melt into another solid object.
Yeah,
I must admit, the no planes theory is actually ostracised by the truth movement, which I think is very one-sided and very, oh, well, that doesn't quite fit, so we're not going to look at that. But that's the whole point of the truth movement, is actually looking at every aspect of this thing.
Yeah, well, tell me all about it. I was saying this stuff 6 years ago, and I was essentially ostracised by the truth movement. I mean, particularly low point was when the actual no-planers, who were thought to be the freaks of the 9/11 truth movement, disowned me because my no-planes theory at the time was too freaky. But research done since then has confirmed essentially what I put forward as a theory that explained all the facts. And the research now shows that it seems more likely that was the case, basically.
I mean,
and I say with all these things, I mean, if these people are prepared to kill, 3,000 people in broad daylight in downtown New York, there are stranger things in heaven and earth than we ever dreamed of.
Just to forward their arms dealership and going into Iraq, well, he's got to finish off his father's work, hasn't he? Let's face it. And also everything for the neocon, the project for the new American century. I mean, the list goes on why they did this and why, in turn, our government did this to us with 7/7 as well.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I mean, we live in a pretty poor world at the moment. I mean, at least we're now seeing some of this stuff coming out. Obviously, they've ordered another inquest into the events of Hillsborough now, because we know that essentially police were lying through their teeth there.
Well, yeah. It's like Waco. Waco needs to be relooked at as well.
Yeah, and then we know that the Savile inquiry completely overturned the findings of 30 years previously about the events of Bloody Sunday, basically.
Pretty much.
And again, I was in a privileged position to be able to give evidence there, because the powers that be were trying to blame Martin McGuinness for those shots being fired. When I saw that, I thought, God, this is dynamite. And then this is after I was in the service, then I saw the agent they were sourcing to it was someone called Infliction, who was known throughout the service as a bullshitter. So I then went to the inquiry, gave evidence, and it transpired MI5 then had to remove some of the blackouts on the documentation. And one of the blackouts they put on the documentation was agent reliability not fully established. Which really you can't argue. You can remove that for reasons of national security. This is completely pertinent to the understanding of the inquiry. I think we should see people on trial for perjury for this. People went on there under oath and essentially lied through their teeth knowingly. So, we're living in a pretty poor world at the moment, and I, do look at it. I mean, I say I've given up with activist groups because, to me, none of them really seem to know the way forward.
Well, that's it. The only thing we can do, I mean, as me and Martin as broadcasters, as Alex, Franky, yourself, is just getting this information out there so people will not go, oh, my government loves me, and yes, they'll never hurt me. It's Al-Qaeda. Which actually loosely translates as in the database. As in it was a nice little database of assets and patsies that the CIA, MI5, Israel, the works had to basically carry out their own agenda and blame it on the boogeyman. So we live in fear, give up our rights and say yes to war.
What I find interesting about this is obviously on this subject is how clearly at some point the BBC was co-opted into all of this. And we know obviously that Greg Dyke, who was a great Director General of the BBC, who had a massive support from his staff, as we saw when he resigned and went, he was removed, and we seem to have these kind of placemen put in place, these terrible bureaucratic types They did the same thing at Liberty. They were supposed to be standing up for human rights. I spoke to Shami Chakrabarti, again, who's held by some of these lefty liberals to be what we need, and she had absolutely no interest in looking at either my case or 9/11 or 7/7 or anything else, basically. She was just, honest to God, just didn't want to know, basically. And I say, that's not the response of an intelligent human being. An intelligent human being wants to check things out for themselves, but the other side seems to have been very good with their sort of psychological profiling and being able to find people who are on paper quite intelligent from the point of view of academic qualifications and so on, but actually are as thick as pig shit.
Take
in the sense of having an inquiry mind.
Take global warming, for instance. I mean, any person can know that what's the one thing that can change our climate? Oh, it's the big round thing in the sky called the sun. Or in the most extreme cases, an extreme volcanic eruption can change the climate and give it a nuclear winter. But Al Gore went out and he did the inconvenient truth. Everyone's jumped on the bandwagon. The government's jumped on the bandwagon. Carbon tax, basically, and again to refrain on our freedoms. And, of course, to create climate sinks in Africa, which is going to kill off untold amounts of people, all for the sake of fictitious global warming.
Yeah, even if you did believe in this stuff, if it was caused by increased carbon dioxide, there's a very simple fuel we could use to replace fossil fuels, and that's hemp, basically. There's a report that came out in America last year, very well-researched academic report. I don't think anybody's disputing its findings. No. Saying that actually America could fuel itself by growing hemp without actually using any land currently to grow crops, because hemp grows everywhere, basically. Well, so that's a very simple example of where, there is a solution to these things.
Well, but if the money's not there, it'll be suppressed.
In the mainstream media.
Yeah, well, if the money's not there, it just gets suppressed.
They couldn't tax it, that's why it's legalised.
Yeah. Well, exactly, exactly.
But same with our car engines. There was a design, wasn't there, I think by an Australian, You can tinker any car design to actually take water instead of petrol. And I believe the patent is held by Shell.
Held by Shell.
Yeah, no, there's countless examples of people who come up with free energy who die suspicious deaths. Wilhelm Reich.
Yes, Wilhelm Reich of Argon Energy.
Schauberger,
Nikola Tesla.
Gary Myers. The list just goes on and on. I mean, it's a bit like being a microbiologist in the late 80s, 1990s. It seems to carry a very high fatality rate, basically.
Yeah.
And you've got to look at these things and look at the patterns. That's the point. And I mean, I don't really know where we are with things like journalism these days and the BBC. They seem to have got these people in who just don't seem to have truly inquiring minds. They have people who want to be spoon-fed.
Well, they just keep them that busy that all they can do is read their teleprompters and go with it. Oh yeah, this is a story because it's been handled to us. I mean, D-notices are handed out in the press to put a lid on any UFO or anything information. Either it's passed off as a meteorite, like.
What happened over Devon 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago,
yeah. A fantastic UFO sighting being passed off as a meteor. It's a shambles.
Well, I said they'll do this time and time again. But I think, can I just say as well, I mean, I see this all as part of a wider change as we come to the end of 2012.
Yeah.
And that there is some kind of spiritual change going to go on. I'm not saying overnight, everybody's going to become like Jesus Christ. I'm saying that there will be a process that begins then. With some kind of moment of realisation among a lot of people, even if it's that kind of boom, oh my God, what have I been playing at? Why have I been believing this bullshit in the mainstream media? I must stop actually contributing to a government that's using essentially my money to drop white phosphorus on kids in Afghanistan and Iraq, basically.
Or poison us with fluoride, spray chemtrails on us and feed us aspartame in our food.
Yeah, well, whatever it is, at whatever level, people will start to wake up to that, basically.
Yes.
I think that's going to start happening. And this is something that's been widely predicted, not just by the Mayan calendar, but by all sorts of cultures across the ages, basically. And that will then lead to a change. At the moment, what I found with the truth movement is you can only go so far in our current world because there's only going to be so many people who are interested in this stuff. That's the point. And that point was reached in about 2007, basically. Yeah. But then it requires some thinking outside the box, to use a terrible management phrase, to move things forward. And what I find with all groups, and this is the problem, is corporate consciousness. It doesn't matter whether that corporation's a financial corporation, or whether it's a trade union, or whether it's 9/11 Truth Movement. There is something about the corporate mind. And, when I first came up with the known planes theory, somebody kept saying to me, but what about the effect of this on the movement? And I said, what about the truth,
Well, yeah.
But it's this kind of introspection about movements and so on. And you realise that the problems of the world have been caused by essentially groups which behave like mobs. Because people are in a group or on a committee, they don't take full responsibility for decisions they are part of making, essentially. Whereas any individual human being who does things wrong for long enough, who's not part of the group, will be pricked by their conscience, unless they're a psychopath. And that's the only thing I can think with Blair, is Blair's actually just an out-and-out psychopath.
Oh, yes. I'll agree with you on that one.
But, you know, we've got to start. I mean, I also see the way forward as well through the law, the common law. Now, there's been a lot of misinformation put out about the common laws. A lot of people who, a bit like in the 9/11 truth movement, after a while, who seem to flip out and start ranting at people and stuff like that. But in a nutshell, the law is love your neighbour as you love yourself. And that principle is actually reflected all the way across the laws of what I call Babylon, the laws of the system. Now, that's what people don't realise. I've done the research to show where that is. For example, there was a piece of case law from the 1930s that shows that the love of your neighbour principle comes above any contract. Now, your relationship with government is a contract. So you can actually say, I don't like your law, your legislation and so on. I think it's barbaric. It's led to unnecessary deaths for centuries, exploitation and so on. The only thing you can judge me on is is the harm I cause to the rights of another real human being, basically.
No,
and if I don't harm the rights of another real human being, I'm essentially free to go about my business as I so wish. I want absolutely nothing to do with the society of the UK, as I say, because it's staffed by psychopaths.
Well, yeah.
And it's always been like that. That's the point. I mean, people try to say, oh, other countries are better than these and so on, but the whole lot of them have been a disaster for humanity. Government creates the problems it pretends to solve. And there is no better example of this than the banning of hemp and marijuana. As I say, there's 20 million people on this planet starving every year who could be growing their own hemp and looking after themselves. And that gets rid of all the stuff about aid programs. It gets rid of the idea of the subsidization of agribusiness in the US. Because at the moment, when you pay your money to a food aid charity, they buy the food for Africa from GM agribusiness in America. So you're giving these kids GM food, basically.
You're basically giving money to eugenicists.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So even things that look like charity within the Babylonian system are not, because they're all part of this crazy accounting system. I urge people to research the Uniform Commercial Code for themselves, because when you start talking about this, you think no sane person could allow this to go on. No person in government or anywhere else would allow this to go on. But it does. The whole system is a credit system. Like, for example, when you get a utilities bill, you will see it's a bank giro credit.
Yes.
Now, under the Uniform Commercial Code, you can write on that, accepted for value, date it and sign it, and then you take possession of the credit note, basically. But most people don't. Most people think it's a bill, so they send it back to the utility. The utility says, oh, right, they've given us the credit note back, and they've given us this fee for handling it, i.e. the money you put in with the slip, basically. But technically, or not even technically, you can go to your bank and place that money in your bank account after you've written accepted for value on it, and you've taken possession of the credit note. And there are people doing this. There are people using the UCC to get their mortgage paid and all sorts of things paid, while other people, are working by the sweat of their brow to try and survive and paying now, perhaps half the money they're earning in rent. The whole thing, they say, has gone insane and can't carry on, because the whole system of usury, which is making money from nothing, which is all to do with interest on the national debt and so on, means that the actual people who really get hit by this stuff are the people at the bottom of the chain, i.e. the poorest people of the world in a world economy. So anybody who's using those systems...
It's not going to be the people who are running the system into the ground on purpose. It is going to be the people in the third world, the people who are, unemployed in this country, homeless, that are needing help from their own government and their own people, and they're just going, well, no, you're nobody, you're nothing. We're concentrating on this. We don't care what happens to you. You're unimportant. This is our goal.
Yeah, no, this is where we've got to try and use the common law way forward and just to say start taking land, because again, under the common law doesn't recognise title to land. The common law says any human being wants to take up some land to feed themselves is entitled to do that, basically. And what we can also use, crucially, against all people in government is the oath, basically, because the oath starts off with an oath to God. Whether you believe in God or not, if you mention God, you're under God's law. And God's law is love your neighbour as you love yourself, essentially. Yeah. And which is interestingly an atheistic covenant, doesn't mention God at all. But having sworn that oath, these people are then, bound by that law, basically. And it's quite clear from the coronation oath as well that the Queen is bound by that law. So this is what we should be using to go forward, is trying to use the charge of perjury against people who don't obey the oath. And this is the best way, I think, to try and get inquiries and so on.
Yeah.
If the Attorney General won't give an inquiry into the death of Dr. David Kelly, for example, there's been no formal inquest. That is a violation of the common law, because you cannot do justice until you have truth.
No.
And you can't have truth until you've received information under oath, basically. This is all according to maxims of law, which again I've researched. These are the very highest principles of law. They're not like pieces of legislation and say you can pass any nonsense legislation. All you need is a few idiots in Parliament. And again, coming back to this, why do people think they should obey legislation? I mean, let's face it, these people are now multi-millionaires put there by multi-billionaires. Why would anybody in their right mind think that those people are working in their best interests? And why would anybody in their right mind think that they've got a duty to repay with their taxes money just invented by the Bank of England? The Bank of England has invented something like 300 billion of new currency in the course of about the last year. The national debt when New Labour came to power in 1997 was only 350 billion, basically. Now, who in their right mind is going to think that's a good thing to do? And I say, what I'm trying to show people is that there's a form of words that you can use, which I've used for people to get off. No one's done it yet for a mortgage or anything, but they've certainly done it for credit card bills, for council tax, for parking fines, things like that, and there's been no comeback, basically.
I mean, that's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I think Franky's got my Facebook email. I will send Franky an email. But yeah, if you could send me that information out, I will get it out on the website. I will get it up on the podcast so people have this information.
Yeah, no, I'll do that.
That'll be absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, because I say the way forward is it's not going to be about creating a mass movement, because the other side are well versed in bringing mass movements to their knees.
Well, it's just creating friction upon friction, isn't it? I mean, it's just going to create riots, and they're going to crack down and bring martial law in and just take even more of our rights away. I mean, what right way is it to go to get rid of these evil, maniacal, horrible people that seem to be in charge of the way the world works?
Yeah, no, they rely upon a lot of stupid people.
Yeah,
that's the point, don't they? They rely, but nevertheless, I don't understand how people can't think there's some sort of evil conspiracy going on against mankind. There's clearly an orchestrated campaign. I mean, it's to not say that. I mean, from everything I've seen, I mean that is the case. But they do rely upon a lot of stupid people out there. But again, that's our job, is to have a strategic campaign to make sure that stupid people like the MPs are left in no doubt that if they carry on following this stupid route knowingly, again, we will be prosecuting them and bringing them to justice for violation of the oath, basically. And I think that's the only way to do it, really. I mean, and again, if you can get people to stop paying mortgages, show them a lawful way not to pay a mortgage, and people start doing that, no one will invest in the system, and that brings
the system will bring itself down. It will collapse.
Yeah, people say to me, "Oh, why do you want to bring the system down?" And I say, because you cannot negotiate with this system.
No.
You can't lobby it or anything.
You can't. You just won't win. They're just so bent. They're just so crooked that if you actually go try and play their game to better them, you're going to get nowhere. We'll just be in the same position we are now.
Yeah, the system only works if the masses go along with it.
Well, the system only works for the people that create the system.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I think now you're in a situation where there's a lot of people out there who are you might say they're going along with it, but they're not. They can see that there's something terribly, terribly wrong, but what they're doing, of course, is waiting for some inspiration to come from the mainstream to correct this, because that's not going to come, is it? That's the point.
Because they own the mainstream, so that information's never going to get out.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think there's a lot of people, obviously, who've seen through what is going on. They've read up on 7/7 and 9/11, but they just don't know what to do about it, basically.
No.
So anything we do will fall on fertile ground. So I don't think changing the world and correcting it is actually that difficult. I just think that we've just got to get rid of the idiots who've been in activist groups and idiots who've led 9/11 truth and so on. And those people have just got to go to one side and realise that what they've done has not worked. It's been a total failure. And they need to take responsibility for that, as any true human being should be prepared to take responsibility for their actions and not start blaming other people in the group, which is what inevitably will happen.
It is group mentality, though, for you, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I say the mob is dangerous. I mean, I've seen the mob sometimes kind of turn on me, and it is quite frightening. You see this kind of emptiness in people's eyes where they lose that connection to their conscience, basically. And they think because a lot of people are doing something, that makes it right. But, the history of the world is about that. It's, that's what Nazi Germany said.
I was just about to say, yeah.
The Spanish Inquisition, But I think because there is a change coming at the end of this year, I think that what we're doing will fall on even more fertile ground come 2013. And I think the other side are going to get a bit of a shock. People like
fingers crossed, and I'll tell you what, I cannot wait for that day.
Yeah, no, I say we've got to take a view of this as well. I mean, there's no sense in going for revenge against these people.
Oh,
you know,
no.
if they see the errors of their ways and they admit that and they want to make up for what they've done, that's fine by me. There's no point in putting a man in prison who's realised what he's done is wrong and isn't going to do it again. But if they don't do that and they don't go through a process of acknowledging what they've done is wrong, yeah, we come down like a ton of bricks, basically, because that is what they deserve. If they don't realise that torture and unlawful war and so on are wrong, they are not fit to enter human society, basically.
And you see, this is where I don't agree with you with that. I think, yes, I mean, yeah, if they come to the realisation that what they've done is wrong, I'm sorry, yeah, but what about the untold damage, loss, hurt and cost of human life? That still has to be held accountable.
Oh yeah, no, I think they've got to try and make good that. But I mean, how do you? I mean, in the case of Blair, how do you make good the loss of more than 2 million lives? You know, how do you make good Guantanamo Bay? How do you make good the fact that you trebled the wealth of billionaires? You know, I mean, it is quite tricky to think how you can make them actually, you know, pay compensation or compensate for that. But obviously the starting point will be taking all their money and wealth off them and
distributing it throughout the world. Yeah,
that'll be the starting point, and that's whether, you know, even if they say what I've done is totally wrong, you can't allow them to. But because obviously part of their admission, you'd have to say, well, look, you've made this money from what you did wrong, so you must turn this money over to us, basically. All the houses you've got from this, the wealth, it's all as a result of your evil. Therefore, if you want to hold on to it, you're not truly repentant, basically. So that's the way
I think a lot can be said for the stocks and a load of rotting tomatoes, to be honest.
Oh, yes.
I definitely would be Mr. Blair's territory as far as that was concerned.
Oh, yes. Now, unfortunately, I am going to have to stop you there. We have actually gone an hour and a half over our allotted time. But you know what? Today, I just don't care. It's been an absolutely fantastic show. I want to thank you, David. I want to thank Franky. And I want to thank Alex as well, Martin. And for everyone who's listened and emailed in, we will get that information that David's just put out on the website and up as soon as possible.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much.
That is absolutely brilliant. You've been listening to Haunted Devon for another Monday night. We will be back next week, hopefully with Lucy Pringle.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Until then, I'm going to leave you with a bit of adagio to strings and put on the playlist before the producer comes up and tells me off. You've been listening to Soundart FM 102.5, independent radio for independent thought. Good night.
listening to Soundart Radio.